Charlie from Amazon Co. UK. Hope you enjoy it. Please sub me if you like it. Charlie didn't know what to say, so he said, "Hi, hello," said Tinker, brushing the rain off his books and frowning. "Have you had a row?" said Charlie. "You could say that," said Tinker. "I'm fed up with her bossing me around," he said. Tinker felt guilty for ignoring Charlie for the last few days, but he wasn't keen on apologizing. It wasn't cool. All that he could do was offer Charlie a piece of chewing gum, which he gladly accepted, and as soon as he did so, the curse was broken. They were friends again. "What shall we do?" said Charlie. He always looked to Tinker to organize things. Tinker didn't have a clue, but he didn't want to appear not confident. "Just follow me," he said with the dazzling smile of old. Charlie began to grin also. It felt great to have his best friend back again. He didn't want to tell him about his mum, as he didn't want to darken the mood. So he decided to tell him about the bird that he had found. With all of the commotion with Keith, he had forgotten to check, and he hoped that she'd be all right. Tinker was impressed. "I'd love to see her," he said as he handed Charlie a piece of gum. "I think we should go down the woods," said Tinker, "and see what we can find," he said excitedly. Charlie nodded enthusiastically. It was always nice to have somewhere to go. The sky was autumnal and icy blue, and the ground was... 1 minute, viewers. And the ground was hard, soft, cold and hard. It was perfect for walking, thought Charlie, and he felt himself feeling happier than he had in a long time. Chapter 42, Mary and Bird. Meanwhile, Mary was busy getting back onto her feet and into the swing of things. After reading so many books in so short a time, she decided to have a wander round the house, and unusually for her, she was getting bored, and she decided to stretch her legs. The nurse said that she should get out more and be more active. Mary decided to brave walking up the stairs, and which, in her present state, seemed like walking up Mount Everest. She was huffing and puffing after a few steps, and she began to worry that she would collapse. The last thing that she wanted was for Charlie to find her collapsed on the stairs when he came home from his adventures. She was ready to turn back when she heard a strange high-pitched squeaking noise, almost like a balloon being pinched tightly, and all of the air coming out. Mary followed the noise, and it seemed to come from Charlie's bedroom. Hello, viewers. Mary was intrigued, and it was a place that she didn't often venture into. She felt guilty as she pushed open the door, and the squeak grew louder, but this time with strange flapping sounds and mixed in for good effect. Mary looked round the room at the Spider-Man posters and the comics strewn everywhere. She was perplexed to see the Christmas Carol book that she had bought Charlie for Christmas to encourage him to read something meaningful was still looking unopened by the side of his bed. Mary sighed. It was obvious that it was unread, and it looked like it had been kept in a glass cage in a museum like an artifact. Mary sighed as she wasn't sure if he was going to change despite his best efforts, but she knew that she loved him all the same. Mary moved towards the squeaking noise which came from the cupboard, and she opened it slowly with trepidation. Hello, viewers. Mary jumped with surprise when she saw the bird there flapping its wings, and then her heart melted like butter. How had it got there, she reasoned, and then she realized that it must have been Charlie, and she took the bird out of the hat, and she marveled at its beautiful wings and the eyes which opened like clockwork. Mary would have to speak to Charlie when he returned, as she was sure that the bird wouldn't survive long in the cupboard. She would have to call the RSPB, but not before Charlie returned, she reasoned. They walked deeper into the woods and over fallen trees, and the ground littered with beautiful conkers, and Charlie gasped as a squirrel ran fast up a tree in front of them. Look at that, said Tinker. I wish I could do that, he said, making Charlie laugh again. The further they went into the woods, the darker and more creepy it became. It was hard going walking over all of the fallen leaves and the endless twigs and branches which looked like they had been designed to trip them over. Charlie heard a sound in the distance, and it wasn't a pleasant-sounding noise. "What's that?" he said to Tinker, a little curiously, but worried. "Sounds like some kind of dog," he said to Tinker, curiously. "It sounds like a wolf," he added with a straight face. Charlie wasn't sure if he was joking. Sometimes it was difficult to tell. The bark grew into a growl, and then they saw it. It was snarling and spitting. Spittle was dripping from its razor-sharp teeth. It reminded Charlie of a dog with rabies, and he looked around at the impossibly high trees, and he began to panic as he looked at Tinker for help. But he looked just as worried as him. The ravenous, snarling dog got closer to them as the leaves and conkers flew all around them. The dog continued spitting and baring its teeth. Charlie wasn't sure if dogs could eat people, but he wasn't going to risk it. Charlie felt like he was walking in treacle, but the dog was nearing them. They didn't have much time. "Quick," said Tinker, who had stepped up to the trunk and off the tree with the ease of one walking up a ladder. "Jump," Tinker said to Charlie, and he grabbed his hand as the jaws of the dog snapped around his clean blue jeans. They climbed higher as the dog jumped up as if it was possessed. It was delirious with anger, though they had no notion why. After 10 minutes of sitting in the tree, Tinker was growing bored. "We'll have to go eventually," he said, and he reached into his pocket and he pulled out a fresh-looking apple. "Hello, viewers. I've been saving this," he said with a cocky grin. He then threw it far into the distance, and it skittered over the frozen leaves. The snarling dog looked confused and then interested by the sight of its ribcage. It hadn't been eating too well, and the hungry dog ran after the apple like a child runs after a ball, with the spit glittering over the fauna and flora. "That's the dog." "Quick," said Tinker, and they jumped down and then landed like a cat on the ground, and they ran the other way unnoticed, while the dog devoured the apple without looking up at them. It looked happy. Hello, viewers. Chapter 44, New Bullies. "That was a close call," said Tinker, and he reached into his seemingly never-ending pockets, and he pulled out another shiny apple with the ease of a magician pulling a rabbit from his hat. Charlie chuckled loudly. "Trust you to have two," he said, and Tinker smiled. "It's good to be prepared," he said, with a big bite of the apple, and Charlie asked him his favorite question. "What shall we do now?" he said, somewhat irritatingly. "We'll keep walking," said Tinker. "I'm sure we'll find something interesting," he said as he made the apple vanish with few bites. The further they went into the woods, the spookier it became, but they were so busy having fun that they didn't notice. Tinker always made Charlie laugh, and it had to be a long time since he'd done that, and just as things were going great, they saw a familiar group in the distance. What they were doing there was anyone's guess. Charlie began to stutter as he spoke. "It's Smigger," he said with a huge sense of dread. "Don't worry," said Tinker. "I'm ready for him." Charlie couldn't see how. What are you two fairies doing in the woods?" said Smigger, to the huge amusements of his two cronies. Charlie muttered something inaudible. Tinker was more forceful. What business is it of yours?" he said, and he puffed out his chest, and he rose up on his boots like a cockerel waiting for a fight. Smigger walked up to him and he pushed his big nose into his face, and they grimaced at each other, while Charlie fiddled with his thumbs and he wondered which was the best direction to run away. Smigger's friends were egging him on, and the air was crackling with tension, and it was only a matter of time before the first punches were thrown. Thankfully, it was thrown by Tinker, and Charlie watched open-mouthed as Smigger toppled over like a skyscraper. Now it's begun, he thought, and then they were rolling and scrambling on the forest floor and cheered on by Smigger's thugs as they rolled in the dust. Charlie fidgeted nervously, and he wasn't one for violence, and he didn't even enjoy watching it. His eyes began to flutter, and he slowly began to drift away. Now he was standing on the arm of a huge pylon as he observed the city in miniature. He could see people shopping and a stream of cars of all colors and sizes below. Everyone was going somewhere. It seemed to be Spider-Man that everyone was moving but him, as he observed every detail of the super-fast city. Hello, viewers. Amidst the sea of black umbrellas, something caught his eye. A shifty-looking man was walking too close to an old lady who was dressed in a lovely mink coat, and her luxury handbag was open just long enough for the wrong kind of person to peer inside. There was something about the man's greedy look in his eye which made Spider-Man sit up and take notice. His spider sense was tingling like a fly on a wire. Bang! It happened, and his hand went into the woman's handbag and fished out a glossy-looking purse, the kind that is never empty, thought Charlie, who was imagining himself as Spider-Man. Ruefully, it didn't take him long to swing into action, and his web struck the glass of the skyscraper with the strength of steel and the finesse of silk, and he swept past the office workers, with only his shadow moving across their shuffling papers, and then he was onto the criminal like a cat in a flash. He grabbed the jeweled purse and he apprehended the thief, who was too astonished to run away. He sat waiting like a sitting duck for the police to arrive. Please be more careful, said Spider-Man, to the surprised but grateful old lady, as he turned on a dime and he disappeared over the smoggy city streets. And then the crack of thunder exploded in the sky, but it wasn't thunder, it was the blast of Bob's trusty old shotgun. Hello viewers, hope you enjoyed it. Please sub me if you liked it. More to come. Charlie by Jason William Lee on Amazon Co. UK.